and these folks are over leveraged. And what we're seeing on our side, managing 800 units, talking with other investors, rents are coming down. And it happens. I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times in a career. They go up, they come down. And when they come down and your interest rate goes up, you're gonna have a lot of folks that are gonna be negative cash flow, possibly panicking and possibly wanting to sell. And then now you're in a position where, well, I can cash in, maybe. Today's guest is Jim Kay, and he is originally from Greece and moved over here when he was a small child, right?
2.5 years old.
You've been here a while, and you came over here with a degree, or you came over here. You got a degree in what when you initially went to college?
English language and literature. I was actually involved in political philosophy.
So, what did you do anything with that degree?
Yeah, I went to Greece and I served as a language teacher for 7 years, and then I came back here and I worked for MTS, which produces language testing, high stakes language tests. One of them is what you need to take in order to go to an American university for children. I was one of the people who ranked that test. That was my day job for 13 years.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you did that. That job was go to college. 13 years you did that.
Yeah, I went to college, and then I went overseas during graduate school. I skipped out on my fellowship at an academic university and moved overseas to follow a girl, and stayed there for 7 years. First in Paris, France, and then in Greece. I developed as a language teacher, specifically high stakes exam coach. You know, you have people here who prepare students for the SAT. I did something like that. Except it was for language tests. In Europe, if you have English language, if you pass the test, you get a certification that makes you more eligible for jobs, especially in the public sector. Work at a school. And I would also do private lessons with people, and this was the days before Skype and anything like that. I'd go to their house and haul around my bags of books and run lessons.
What a difference in today's world that you could have done. You could have had students all over the world. It's
technology is still not completely different.
Yes.
Yeah.
13 years doing that, then at what point did you
I spent 7 years there, then I came back to the United States.
be back? And now you're here, you're doing that type of work that we just talked about.
Yes, I'm working for the Pennsylvania Department of Education for Allegheny.
So when did you, are you still doing that now?
No.
So when did you transition? Because most of the listeners, they want to get to the point where they can stop going to work, stop having to answer to somebody else, be their own boss. When did you make that transition? What was that dialogue like? Who did you have that dialogue with?
Okay, so in 2015, we bought our first rental property. My contribution to buying our first rental property was to say yes, because my wife brought the first deal.
Okay,
I said,
2013, that's very cool. So she brought the deal.
absolutely,
But were you guys thinking about this?
sort of, but she was in a situation she could only get the money that she was owed if somebody else sold her house. So a friend of hers sold her house and didn't have to pay back his debt. And that's how we got our first rental property.
So how did that finance?
We took out a home equity loan on our place for the full amount and
Okay.
just the thing that hurts me, this is the first deal ever, right? So it's bad. No actual money changed hands, right? Whenever you get a loan like this, you just go to the bank and you promise a lot of stuff, right? And bank checks start coming your way. It's
Right.
it's a lot of thing if you think about it, isn't it? It's like okay, so yes I will, and you know the rent checks start coming. You just like I just made a whole bunch of promises.
So you owned that property. Well, I want to say you didn't own it free and clear, essentially. So your loan is now attached. It was attached to your house.
That's right.
And how
I
did
would
you?
not recommend that, especially in this day and age, but at that point, I think our interest rate was 2.87%. Maybe.
Right. Did you eventually have an accelerated plan to pay that off quicker, pay off that line of credit?
Initially, I said, it wasn't only credit, it was just standard liquidity. Initially, I said, yes, it was something, let's get this off as quickly as possible. Which wasn't a stupid idea, I just, I've always been for debt, some extent, just like everything else, I was different debt. And, everybody gets into this the first time, in the beginning, this should at least have some healthy perspective of debt, instead of going in, all leverage all the time. So I was like, let's just pay this off, and, we paid it off, we ended up paying it off, relatively quickly on that accelerated rate, but nothing, really extraordinary thing, because we held that property for many years.
You still own that property?
No, we sold the property.
Okay, sold that, now how did you pay it off so quickly?
Kept on pushing money into the debt. We just kept on, we sold it, that's 2013, right?
That's when you bought it, yep.
Yeah, it was 2021,
Okay,
11 years ago, so.
I did that about 4 or 5 times the past few years, I bought stuff. 2010, 2016, we bought it at a really good price.
A month ago,
sold it at the really awesome market.
Yeah, but I didn't make money on the really awesome. What I did was I bought it for 100,000, I sold it for 5, which meant nothing. We bought it at 100,000, sold it for 130,000. And then the guy who bought it held it for 2 years, lived and flipped it, and walked away with $449,000. Probably wasn't deeply. We really, by that point, we were significantly invested in the homestead Monholder, which is where most of the rest of our properties are. And I just wanted to get rid of it. This wasn't really a great investment. It was a single family, and it was about 1890. That was probably when these books were done.
It was your first property, so perhaps you paid more than you should have, and then maybe you sold it for a little less than you should have. It is what it is. When you purchased that, were you both working?
Yes, we would.
Okay. And what did your second deal?
The second deal was buying out a tax sale from the auction.
Okay.
I bought a house for $5,000 on 9th Avenue in Homestead. I bought actually it was in my home. That was actually the house was a complete tear down. But at that point, I really thought, let's get into this. Let's buy a tax sale. Let's see what happens. It's $5,000. What's the worst I can do? We actually sold that house just 3 years ago for $10,000. Immediately after we bought that house, we bought our next investment. Our next investment was a house that we bought for $25,000, which was half of the duplex.
Pocket listing or pocket sale is basically, for those who don't know, it's just an agent might have a lead on a potential listing, and the agent comes to you, the client, the buyer, and says, hey, I got a listing, buyer, you're the buyer, the seller wants to sell, we push it together.
We did that with 3 more properties.
Because it's good, so that's what building relationships is super important. Those relationships can carry you through slow time. Like some people are really good at networking, some people are excellent at it. That real estate agent sounds like you bought 3 or 4 properties with them. So if you could equate that to how much money that person's gonna give you, and if you do that over and over again tenfold with 10 other agents, approximately how many units do you own as rental properties?
6 buildings, 15 units. Oh, sorry, 6 buildings, 13 units.
6 buildings, 13 units, and
I live in half the duplex.
and are they all paid off or do you have mortgages?
I have, one is a commercial loan.
Okay,
And a couple of other mortgages, but
but I do feel that the market hasn't, I don't think we've seen the worst of it. That's not a bad thing, it's a bad thing when you're over leveraged. And that's what we all practice, but when that hurts you is when you're so over leveraged and you have to. So you get a loan at 5%, and after 5 years, the commercial loan typically matures and then it adjusts. And it's going to adjust high, so there's gonna be a lot of adjusted loans going from 4 to 5% to maybe 7 or 8%. And these folks are over leveraged, and what we're seeing on our side, managing 800 units, talking with other investors, rents are coming down. And it happens, I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times in a career. They go up, they come down. And when they come down and your interest rate goes up, you're gonna have a lot of folks that are gonna be negative cash flow, possibly panicking and possibly wanting to sell, and then now you're in a position where, wow. I can cash in, maybe,
It's not my fault, they took these suicidal risks over and over again, you see them all the time.
Yeah.
And I got it all on credit cards, and I got it all on this, and I go, seriously? It's like, the party's gonna end, the party always
And
ends.
hey, I got stuck in that trap, I still, I still do things I probably shouldn't do, and should be more frugal, like that, but. I'm a lot smarter and not wiser now, but no, it happens, I get it.
Yeah, okay, when I was 20, when I was sure, but yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
it'd be not.
But you are positioning yourself, and everybody should listen to, live below your means.
It's down of 100 and I still own the townhouse, but the townhouse is now worth around $100,000 with a maintenance fee of $400 $400 a month. Tennis courts, a swimming pool, in the North Hills School District.
You're no less happy now where you are than where you were, but
Yeah, I got lucky.
like, I don't live in $1 million house, I could absolutely, I talked to an agent friend of mine, and we own some property together, and we were talking about, he was asking me, you've seen the downturn in the market, what have you done in the past? And so on and so forth, and I was giving some advice, I said, the best thing is, you did not go buy that Corvette. Him and his wife could have, well, they're not wife yet, but they're wife yet, but they could absolutely buy a house. It's living in a 4 unit didn't buy it. You're doing all the right things, you're gonna be living in a $500,000, $2 million house when you're ready to, if you want to. And not have to stress about, how am I gonna buy a couch, and what am I gonna eat for dinner, so I can make this bill payment.
In the last, the only, the way I would talk about this, the way I always talk about this is. I have not had fun with money, about money, with my wife for like 11 years now. Just for that, it's worth it. Just for that little bit of, piece of my life, and it's worth it. My wife had to agree to live in this.
It helps that your wife is understandable, because your wife is from, where's she from originally?
My wife is from Russia, originally, so she lived hard in her home.
Yeah, so she's from, I've had a lot of, immigrants, I had, one of my first, guests was, Omar, and he's from, Egypt.
I know.
Omar, great dude, works hard, but that's a guy who came over with nothing.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why didn't you go to your agents? Why didn't you go to your agents about it?
I just don't do that, especially I knew the agent, I said, nah, I can't.
Remember what you said earlier? Cannot, you never.
You made something and you realize that money isn't everything, but you also, you respect money and what it can do for you.
You're a wonderful servant, a terrible master. And when you find yourself in these situations over and over again, where you're broke, sooner or later you have to accept that, you have to make choices that don't leave you broke. I don't care how much you make, we bought our duplex for $45,000 in cash, okay? It took me 3 years to renovate the top, I did it by myself, it was like that. Maybe I could have done it smarter, maybe I could have done it better, but the reality is that place is paid off 3 times over from the rent that's floating them. It's like they deliberately want to cut their throats when it comes to their house, when it comes to their car. I mean, they for some reason, they need to impress these people who they don't even know.
It's keeping up with the Joneses, and I think it's that, and, it's also just, if you weren't, I was fortunate enough for my mother just taught me the power of saving and really, like, I don't wanna say cheap, but man, she could squeeze a penny and make it scream and
Make the buffalo scream.
turn it into somehow. So I got to watch, I didn't need anybody teaching me that, and I don't think they don't teach you, they teach you certain things in school that aren't really important, they should just teach you how to financial literacy.
I was talking to my nephew. He knows calculus, he's got some calculus at school. And I'm like, did they ever show you, mortgage table? Did you ever see like what, that looks like? It's like, no. It's like, what, really, when it comes to financial literacy, I honestly think, it's not that, they want us stupid, they broke, it's like, nobody really cares, if we are financially literate, again, Or if, like, kids that grow up in America, otherwise, they'd never be able to lease a car. Yes, some of these statistics are just insane. I think it's like 80% of all cars have car payments attached. I mean, really? To get from point A to point, especially in a place like Pittsburgh, how many times have I heard somebody say, I absolutely need a reliable car, I need a reliable car over and over and over again, and that's why I had to buy a new car for $30,000. No, you live in Pittsburgh, in the age of universal cell phone coverage and Lyft and Uber around every corner, if your car breaks down 3 times a year, you're not dead. It's not the end of the world. Besides, you shouldn't be buying a Toyota, you should be buying a Honda. No plug. But they end up like, I see these people doing these absolutely silly things, and it's like their mind control goes in if you don't have anything else to compare it to. If you haven't lived somewhere else, if you haven't you really, really, really want that view of, I don't know, like the Monongahela. And you have to have this special thing or this, especially, at the age of 20, the age of 30. The person who just bought this house that we've lived, right? He's 23 years old. Why don't you just buy the cheapest place you can live in and just live there for 5 years, see how that helps you down the line? It's just, they believe that this is what's right.
We initially started this conversation as like what your goals were, you and your wife. So where are you with, and where do you want to be as far as your portfolio?
We have really modest goals. The way I want to do it is to buy the 2 apartment buildings that are next to mine. There's 3 in a row, and they're all clones of each other. And I thought the one person on one side they're interested in selling, tried to talk to the other person, they seem somewhat interested in selling. I'm not too worried about making it. I mean, we don't really have a dream. We don't even have a plan. We have a schedule. I mean, it's very straightforward. You go for them, put them from the other. You accept that it's not going to be a 9-to-5 game. I mean, and you accept that there's going to be a lot of fruitless reward. There's going to be a lot of fruitless victories where you think, yeah, this is going to bring something. It's not. But in the end, you just punching it out. You keep on shaking hands with the devil, and sooner or later,
So yeah, instead of being more goal oriented, you're more task oriented and schedule oriented. Again, you do the great things on a daily basis consistently. You make mistakes and you get back on track. You're eventually going to reach some version of your goal.
And we're not really worried about absolutely punching it to this point. We're also there's a time limit on how much we want to keep on going. You're thinking about it. I think in 10 years is the next thing.
What do you do on a daily basis other than collect rents and repair your own properties? Do you also provide a service for other landlords or other folks who need help with fixing their properties?
Informally, I have a bunch of connections, a bunch of friends. A lot of people call me up at this stage after that's happening. We're newer in the game. What's this and how do I fix it? How do I take care of it? And also, I also tend to go and check out houses for people who just want to get into this.
And you're not charging for this, or is this a service or consulting? Do you do anything outside of investing for real estate that we could plug here that you nothing like that?
I just have friends. And I just have my network of, and of course, if I need them to do me solid, I get a solid thing.
So you like the Homestead area? That's where most of your stuff is. Then,
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of if you can keep everything close, which is awesome. I'm looking at selling I'm a duplex over in Garfield on Broad Street, which you're shooting over there. That area is exploded. It's not shooting wise, but value wise. 15 years ago, you could buy something for 10,000. That same property today is 150,000. It's far from my office. It's not really far distance wise, but to get there, go through the tunnel, it's just so the market's still good right now. I'm selling it, and I try to keep stuff closer because it's so much easier to manage. It's easier to check on it. My staff and all my resources are closer. Listen, if you can keep the stuff within a certain geographical distance from where you are, it is better not necessarily the only way, I feel it's much better, and I think you would agree.
So much easier.
Yeah.
If you can walk to your, we have two duplexes, okay? And one duplex is on one street and the other duplex is one street over.
Well, we talked earlier, and you said how many investors do you work with before we started taping is, how many investors do I work with that are out of state? Quite a few, but there are hundreds, thousands of out of state investors, and I'm talking out of all over the planet. I mean, Pittsburgh, for like 2 or 3 different reasons. One, it's affordable still. It's becoming less profitable because of that, because of the influx of buyers, the inventory is not increasing. And the information page, everybody has access to that information, and you can estimate what a property is worth, so to speak, and you can, evaluate things, you can Google Street View, you can do a lot of that, which is good and bad. Having all that information,
That's really fun.
it's good if you know how to use it and you know what you're looking at. It's bad if you don't know what you're doing, because you can create your own answer.
Can I ask you a couple questions?
Certainly.
So. Do you run into a lot of people trying to remote manage their property from like 6 states away and that sort of thing?
We have a lot of out of state investors that manage us, help manage their properties. There are quite a few that try to do it from out of state. I don't know how they do it. It's
Without a property.
Without a property. First of all, there's very few good property. I think my company is the best because I'm involved in
Honestly.
I'm involved in it every day. It's the worst part of the real estate business: sales, repairs, doing closings for people, doing mortgages. Real estate management is the worst part, because the tenants hate you and the landlords that you save money. It's the difficult part. Everything goes down. It's rough. But I do think we are one of the best. It's hard to find a good company in Utah. Doing it without a property manager and being out of state, not having resources and determining a good trustworthy repair man here. And dude, it's just, I don't know how,
Where you have
I don't
like,
know how it's done, but you asked me the question, what was there a reason?
our second big list, the one that we got, we bought from a guy who was in Georgia. Trying to remote manage it. He ended up in a situation where one tenant owed him $8,000. And he could never evict her. And the other tenant owed him $4,000 and he could never evict her. And he had to sell the property at this huge loss. And he had no clue, even as a long distance investor, he had no clue how to evict anybody. He was just like hoping this would work out. And it worked out fine for 3 years. But the last year, he ended up selling the property in a major loss. I ended up buying it. It's one street over from where I live. The tenants just looked at me and said, "Oh, he lives one street over." Okay, they realized the jig was up. Right? And from that point on, it's like the property produces a lot.
That's a great story. Tell me, are those tenants still there?
No.
So are you able to turn them around for a little bit and they just. Because we get that a lot, we inherit tenants and it's difficult.
The two tenants were there. One of them initially, when after the sale went through, one of them tried to assume that the game was just going to go on the same as going on, and then presented me with a necessary copy that they were not going to be able to pay me rent that. I disabused them of that notion relatively quickly. We had a few discussions, and she paid steadily from that point on. But she was under the impression, she didn't understand that the guy who had sold the property had basically sold it just to get rid of her. I mean, she was the main reason why he held on to the property. The other tenant also noticed that it was one street away, heard about what I did with the first tenant, and suddenly, like the late rent, all the arrears, all the rest of it, all that went away. Now, granted, the property was in bad shape. I mean, the guy who had owned it, he hadn't put the money in, he hadn't put the maintenance in. He didn't know the property's weak points, the property's strong points. I mean, I spent a lot of money getting the place in order. Once I got the place in order, however, a few more shenanigans happened, let's put it that way. And I was like, that's it. Once some of these people get the leeway through remote management, and they've seen that anything goes, And, you know, the property, the guy managing the property, that has no key, because he's 4 or 5 days away.
Now, if you manage 13 of your own and you live here, it's fine.
I live here in the same borough than most, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of them are very short.
But with this specific one, you were able to get into their brains and say, look, now this is the way it works. And you straighten them out for a short term, but long term, it just didn't work out. You had to fight the bullet, get rid of them. Then you went in, I'm assuming, and rehab units and got market rents and did your best to get good tenants in place.
Yeah.
And your screening process is just something you've learned over the years,
That's exactly right.
reading and maybe just listening and just learning how not to do it and getting better at it over time. Yeah, and you still make mistakes. Have you made any mistakes?
Recently, well, I just got involved in a flip. I thought, yeah, this is my opportunity in this economy. So like, yeah, now's the time to get into a flip house because I mean, I've done a number of renovations for rental properties. I've even done a couple of BRRs. The renovation for rental properties, like I control the renovation. This was a much more elaborate affair. But you don't take some kind of crazy risk, put this all on credit cards. You don't get into this with nothing and say, yes, hope is my boat and it's gonna float me all the way to the promise. That's not how it works. Not when it comes to real estate.
Have you made any errors recently, maybe in the past 5 years, in what you thought was gonna be a good tenant and they weren't a good tenant?
Oh. Yes, but I pulled my bacon out of the fire.
And the reason I mention this is because you're not always gonna pick the best investment. They're always gonna pick the best tenant. I made many multiple. I tend to make more errors because I'm not a good judge of. I'm not the person who should be screening in this months. I'm too nice. I just want it off my plate. I just want to rent it. And every time I get to pay and don't let my property manager, my wife, my daughter, my property manager, my staff do their job, it ends up like yes. So follow the procedure, don't deviate from it. So you hire slow and fire quick, just rent slow, and you get rid of them as quickly as possible. So let's hear this wonderful story now.
Right. So when the latest acquisition was in apartment, but when I assumed control of the apartment building, there was a guy on the first floor whose name but his last name didn't exactly sound like the way he pronounced his last name. I looked at his contract and his last name again, I asked him for his ID. I got his ID and I saw that he had intentionally, when he signed with the former management, he had intentionally changed the spelling of his last name. And what he had done was, the reason he had done it so that nobody could look him up, unless they verified his ID, because their identification for his ID, nobody could look him up and see the 4 evictions on his record from the last 10 years. 4 evictions in the last 10 years.
And you caught that by getting a copy of his driver's license?
Ultimately, yes. First of all, I saw how he spelled his last name. I listened to and I went through the web, a bunch of different websites, specifically the Newswrite Pennsylvania. The one we all use, the News, or Justice News, I think it's the News.
Okay, yeah.
I went through that, tried the different spellings, and found that this way. Well, there's 4 evictions on that record, and they all seem to be from the same area here in Allegheny County. And so I went through all that, and I was like, and I thought this guy was fine. Talk Department of Allegheny County Department of Court Records too. I mean, I check everything. I go, I can social media, I keep on checking. That's why it's at the end. And typically, a lot of my people are new renters. Have anything on the credit score. I once ran into. Again, I'm the same guy. The reason I was able to get rid of him was he got to court under a different name. Imagine. He misrepresented himself in court, which is perjury. And I brought that to his attention. That's how I finally got him out of there. Marriage. What the credit score though is the last thing I tend to run as part of the transfer smart package, and I typically pay. It's a bit backwards from what I know a lot of other people don't do the same way. But
So you do not charge for an application?
I do not charge for an application. We get all the way to the end, and usually I have one person in mind, and that's the person I want to transition the smart home on, and that's, I think that too. Interesting.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that, because typically it's, I think we charge $50 per applicant. And that's what it costs to run the criminal, the background check, I think we make
$10.
$10.
$10 on that if you use services.
Yeah, it might not, but it's not for profit generating, because a lot of times we eat them. People complain, well, you should have told me this. No, we did tell you this, don't lie in this, and if your credit's really bad, or this is bad, or that, but don't fill it out, so no one can spend your money, then they fill complaints. Yeah, money.
How many units do you have?
We manage it,
800 units.
yeah.
13. I have a much smaller portfolio, sure.
I get
it. I can afford to waste my time and my money.
How many? Let's talk about that, how much, like, as far as. What do you think, on average, owning 13 units? Is your vacancy typically? You typically have one always vacant, half of one, I know that's not possible, but how does your vacancy rate compare? And I'll let you know, because we're running right now probably around 3%, sometimes we've been as high as 8%, it depends on the market.
Well, I do have I'm willing to take a couple months as I have to get it the exact right tenant, because usually I'm looking for very long-term tenants, right, to stay in place. This turnover,
Turnover does, so I do try to explain that to a lot of our clients, so I know you want to go, I know you want to bump the rent from 1,000 to 1,200. That's a good idea. I'll open $75. I want 1,200 because the one down the street right. Well, the market rents are down right now, and they're seeing your specific unit. They move out, that kitchen tenant, right? That food, the this, that's all, everything costs about double than it did 7,350. That's gonna cost you 15 to 20,000 cap that 1,200 square foot.
You've done that every day.
I not want to increase the rent at all, and I always go back to, and it depends on how deep your pockets are. Maybe you're like, you know what, I got $1 million in the bank. I don't care if things go out. I want to make it really nice. I want it to be the best unit I can make it, and I want it to rent for $40 a month. And I get it, I understand, I was better deep pockets. Now, if you don't have deep pockets, I don't need to make that decision. Some people on the street street budget, they don't have. If the rent doesn't come in, they can't make their mortgage payment, and those are the hardest clients for us. Because I'm like, you are running too tight.
Let me ask you,
It's hard for us to do our job if you're running that tight.
here's my next question to you, okay? Do you honestly have tenants who pay on the dot on the first of the month, every month, who you have a couple, I'm sure.
I'm sure we do.
But are they ignorant of the fact that they're very good tenants? No, they know exactly who they
No,
are,
they're
they
good
know
tenants.
exactly what they deserve,
And to digress for a second, there are tenants that pay on the 25th.
Sure.
Fine by me.
As long as
They've
that.
been a tenant for mine for 15 years, and they pay on the 25th. And the owner's like, I want my late fee, I want this.
Oh, God, but the late fees, yeah. I don't care for late fees.
Yeah, well, we'll waive them. We waive them all the time, but
If you have somebody who's consistently paying you a late fee, and you're just taking it. Sooner or later, they're gonna say to themselves, this guy is taking advantage of me, for the late fee, maybe true, may not.
See, ours automatic, It's automatic. It does, after the 5th day, it's automatic, it goes a letter. Now, many times, if they ask. It's gone, if they ask me, and it's my tenant, this should be good.
Especially
If
if
you
you
$500, that's fine, it'd be great tenants, okay.
you know the rental industry. You do not want somebody who is that erratic all the time on your rent roll. If you've got 15 units, you got 800 story. But you can't afford that kind of erratic behavior, and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, you're like, is this gonna be the month? Is this gonna be the month? No, if they're that erratic, they can go to somewhere else. I want somebody who's gonna go and pay me, or they're gonna pay me on the dot if they can, and if they can't get it to me on the date, they're gonna call me first.
Yeah, that's a good point, is, if they communicate well, they don't ghost you. And they promise to, oh, you know what, I'm gonna be late this month, but next month I'm gonna make $150 payment extra. Can I set up a payment thing, something like that? And we get tenants all the time, but what I tell the property, it's the first time they stop doing that. We can ask to start. Doing it. Why would you do that 3 times? Any last word, any questions for me, any, what, I guess maybe the top. What would be the top one item if you could give a new investor? What would be that? Word of wisdom or that you know, generate that nugget that they can take with
If you're gonna do something that's highly speculative and very risky, I'm not telling you not to do it. But if you're gonna do something like that, then you better be ready to take all of that money in cash, put it on the sidewalk, and watch it burn and walk away. If you're not prepared to do that, then you're not prepared to take whatever risk you're thinking about taking. I want to get, that would be my one piece of advice to anybody who's thinking about these sort of money.
this is what I tell every investor we look at, and this is how I look at every investment. Best case scenario, worst case. If I can live with worst, and the worst might be burning that money on the sidewalk, then doing it. But if you can't, don't, it's fun. Like, you know, if this could affect your kids, your college fund. Whatever,
Your relationship with
everything,
your wife.
exactly, don't do it, so yeah. Great piece of advice, I hope you guys all take it with you, and I appreciate you coming on, man. Yeah, appreciate it, thank you.